I'm Lori Grunin, Senior Editor for CNET, and this is the Nikon D3100. The D3100's body is a little smaller and lighter than the D3000's. It's still the lightest in its class, but Nikon has also managed to cram more direct access controls onto it. It's quite comfortable to shoot with, though it feels a little plasticky. While the location of some of the controls has changed since the D3000, it has the same overall operation. As usual, the top mode dial is segregated into the scene, PASM, and full auto modes. Nikon Guide mode provides various levels of step-by-step help for a limited number of common shooting scenarios. There's easy operation, which, like auto, provides access to a limited number of options, as well as an advanced mode, which describes the appropriate settings for the chosen scenario and then allows you to change the settings yourself. On the back, there's a nicely implemented thumb-operated live view rocker switch and record button. The four-way navigation switch feels a little more responsive than the previous models, too. Nikon moved the drive mode controls, single, burst, self-timer, and quiet, to a switch next to the mode dial. It's a location I much prefer over burying it in the menus or in the interactive display. In addition to a composite and HDMI out and USB connector, the D3100 has a connector for Nikon's proprietary GPS module. But there are a lot of more useful shooting features still missing that other cameras in this price class provide, including wireless flash control. Most egregiously, though, the D3100 lacks simple exposure and flash exposure bracketing. Nikon seems to concentrate on in-camera post-processing for the bulk of its features instead. In terms of image quality, though, the D3100 does very well. It has a really nice noise profile. It matches, and perhaps even bests, the current leader in the budget SLR category, the Pentax KX. It produces exceptionally clean JPEGs up through ISO 800, and very usable ones up through ISO 3200. The camera delivers excellent color reproduction in its default SD mode as well, a nice change from some overly saturation-pushing competitors like Pentax and Sony. And its metering and exposure system work reliably and well. Sharpness is of course lens dependent, but I was pretty happy with the various models I tested. Generally, shots look sharp, but not over-sharpened. Video quality looks typical for its class. It's sharp enough, but it has seemingly more rolling shutter artifacts than usual. And note that the lens VR makes a huge difference when you're shooting video. The audio isn't bad, but the full-time autofocus is not only loud, but pretty bad at locking on the appropriate subject. However, the camera does offer full manual exposure controls during movie capture. A 30-second countdown to shut-off timer appears in the upper left side of the display when the camera is idle in the live view or movie mode. It's an interesting touch. Although the camera's performance is perfectly fine, it is a bit slower than the D3000 overall, and it's not quite as fast as its competitors. It also has the slowest burst performance of the group, 2.9 frames per second. In practice, it really did feel a hair too slow to photograph randomly moving subjects like squirrels and birds. It might be fine for photographing the kids, though. It has essentially the same viewfinder as the D3000, which was an okay viewfinder. While the D5000 is expected to remain in the channel for a while, obviously there's significant overlap between the D3100 and the D5000 at similar prices, with only a few things to distinguish between them. The D5000 offers the articulated LCD, a better viewfinder, better performance, and a more well-rounded feature set, like bracketing. But the D3100 provides a slightly larger LCD, it's higher resolution, which you probably don't need, and it does have better movie capture features. They're about tied on photo quality. So ultimately, unless you're into video, the D5000 is probably still the better buy at the same price. If you're into video, the D3100 probably isn't the camera for you anyway. That leaves the Nikon D3100 a very nice DSLR, but one that's not a very compelling buy as long as the D5000 is still around at a decent price, or if it gets cheaper than its announced list. I'm Lori Grunin, and this is the Nikon D3100.